Hey guys, Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Welcome back to my video. My name is Syahrina Adinda. I am here to explain a little about linguistics and what is contained in it. Stay tuned. The first material is Introduction to Linguistics. Language is such a special topic that there is an entire file, linguistics, devoted to its study. Linguistics views language in an objective way, using the scientific method in rigorous research to form theories about how humans acquire, use, and sometimes abuse language. There are a few major branches of linguistics, which it is useful to understand in order to learn about language from a psychological perspective. Linguistics is the scientific study of language. It involves an analysis of language form, language meaning, and language in context, as well as an analysis of the social, cultural, historical, and political factors that influence language. Linguists traditionally analyze human language by observing the relationship between sound and meaning. Meaning can be studied in each directly spoken or written form through the field of semantics, as well as in each indirect form through body language and gesture under the discipline of pragmatic. Each speech sound particle is called a phoneme. How these phonemes are organized to convey meaning depends on various linguistic patterns and structure that theoretical linguists describe and analyze. Some of these patterns of sound and meaning are found in the study of morphology or concerning how words are formulated through morphemes, syntax, or how sentences are logically structured, and phonology, or the study of sound patterns. The emergence of historical and evolutionary linguistics has also led to a greater focus over studying how language change and grow, particularly over an extended period of time. Sociolinguists also study how language develops among different communities through dialogue, and how each language chain grows and varies from person to person and group to group. Macrolinguistic concepts include the study of narrative theory, stylistic, discourse analysis, and semiotic. Microlinguistic concepts, on the other hand, involve the analysis of grammar, speech sounds, paleographic symbols, connotation, and logical references, all of which can be applied to lexicography, editing, language documentation, translation, as well as speech-language methodology, are a corrective method to cure phonetic disabilities and dysfunctions. The earliest activities in the documentation and description of language have been attributed to the 6th century BC Indian grammarian Panini, who wrote a formal description of the Sanskrit language is Astadegi. Today, modern-day theorists on grammar employ many of the principles that were laid down back then. Historical linguistics. Historical linguistics is the study of language change, particularly with regards to a specific language or a group language. Western trend in historical linguistics that back to truly the late 18th century, when the discipline grew out of philology, or the study of ancient texts and antique documents. Historical linguistics emerged as one of the first few sub-disciplines in the field, and was most widely practiced during the late 19th century. Despite a shift in focus in the 20th century towards formalism and generative grammar, which studies the universal properties of language. Historical research today still remains a significant field of linguistic inquiry. Subfields of the discipline include language change and grammaticulation. Historical linguistics studies language change either diachronically or through a comparison of different time periods in the past and present, or in a synchronic manner by observing developments between different variations that exist within the current linguistic stage of a language. At first, historical linguistics served as the cornerstone of comparative linguistics, which involves a study of the relationship between different languages. During this time, scholars of historical linguistics were only concerned with creating different categories of language families and reconstructing prehistoric proto-language by using the comparative method and the method of instruction, internal reconstruction, and the method by which an element that contains a certain meaning is used in different contexts or environments where there is a variation in either sound or analogy. The reason for this had been to describe well-known Indo-European language, many of which used to have long written histories. Scholars of hermeneutical Scholars of historical linguistics also studied Uralic language, another European language family for which very little written material existed back then. After this, there was significant work that followed on the corpora of other languages too, such as that of the Austronesian language as well as of Native American language families. The above approach of comparativism in language is now, however, only a small part of the much broader discipline called hermeneutical or historical linguistics, the comparative study of specific Indo-European language is considered a highly specialized field today, while comparative research is carried out over the subsequent internal development in a language. In particular, it is carried out over the development of modern standard varieties of language, or over the development of a language from its standardized form to its varieties. Next, syntax and morphology. Syntax and morphology are branches of linguistic concern with the order and structure of meaningful linguistic units such as words and morphemes. Syntactic science study the rules and constraints that govern how speakers of a language can organize words into sentences. Morphologists study similar rules for the order of morphemes, subword units such as prefix and suffix, and how they may be combined to form words. Phonological and orthographic modifications between a buzzword and its origin by me partial to literacy skills. Studies have indicated that the presence of modification in phonology and orthography makes morphologically complex words harder to understand, and that the absence of modification between a base word and its origin makes morphologically complex words easier to understand. Morphologically, complex words are easier to comprehend when they include a base word. Semantics and pragmatic. Semantics and pragmatics are branches of linguistics concerned with meaning that subfields have traditionally been divided by the rule of linguistic and social context in the determination of meaning. Semantic, in this conception, is concerned with core meanings and pragmatic concerned with meaning and context. Pragmatic encompasses speech art theory, conversational implicature, talk in iteration, and other approaches to language behavior in philosophy and sociology, linguistics, and anthropology. Unlike semantics, which examines meaning that is conventional or coded in a given language, pragmatic studies how the transmission of meaning depends not only on structural and linguistic knowledge or grammar, lexicon, and etc. of the speaker and listener, but also on the context of the utterance, any factors, and any pre-existing knowledge about those involved, the inferred intent of the speaker, and other factors. In that respect, pragmatics explain how language users are able to overcome apparent ambiguity signs meaning relies on the manner, place, time, etc. And the last material is phonetic and phonology. Phonetic and phonology are branches of linguistics concerned with sound, or the equivalent aspect of sign language. Phonetic is largely concerned with the physical aspect of sounds, such as their acoustic production and perception. Phonology is concerned with the linguistic abstraction and categorizations of sounds. Okay, after all, I can say sorry if there are many mistakes. Hopefully, it will be useful. And see you next time. Wassalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.